Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, September 10th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today we have a great number of feasts, as is usually the case. Today we start off with Abbot Orsini, who says they celebrate Our Lady of Trut near Cologne in Germany. We're told that this church was built under Otho I by Saint Heribert, the Archbishop of Cologne, on the very spot where idols had formerly been worshipped. There you go, sticking it to the idols with Our Lady of Trut. Likewise, we jump down to Italy, Bologna, where they celebrate Our Lady of Life, Santa Maria della Vita, right? On September 10th, 1614, this ancient image was rediscovered, right? The image of Our Lady of Life is placed on the high altar in this church in Bologna, has been attributed to either Simone dei Crocefissi, or to his nephew Lippo de Dalmasio. According to tradition, an image of the Madonna and Child was frescoed on the wall to the east towards the Via Peschieri in the first church built in 1286 by the company La Compagnia di Santa Maria della Vita. So like it's a little confraternity, right? With the reconstruction of 1502, the fresco, which wasn't considered of any particular interest, was covered over by a layer of plaster. Right, so again, the first image probably goes back to the 1300s, and then it was just covered over in the 1500s. But over 100 years later, on September 10th, 1614, the ancient image was rediscovered and still in a good state of preservation. Considered miraculous, it became the object of particular veneration by the confraternity. I'm assuming that Compagnia di Santa Maria della Vita, which it elected as protectress of the adjacent hospital and the sick. Then we jump over to Spain, where also today we have Our Lady of Montserrat in Spain. So again, this is, we mentioned Our Lady of Montserrat on September 8th. Here we have one on September 10th. Also, this image was solemnly crowned by Pope Leo XIII. He granted the coronation on September 11th in 1881. So the September dates, there's a bunch of things here. And so the church is the Abbey Church of the Monastery of Benedictines, which they erected on this very high mountain, probably around the year 1025, right? The basilica is a very beautiful basilica, which encloses this miraculous statue of Our Lady. They call her the Black Lady, right? It was in this shrine that St. Ignatius of Loyola came as a converted knight to lay down his sword and to what they call the Veglia di Armi, right? Which is like the vigil at arms, which is a standard tradition of people becoming knights. But in his case, he was going to later live the hermetical life in Manresa, right, for at least a time. So that's an important place. Like I said, we had the 8th, we have the 10th, we have the 11th. There's many different days that are celebrated, but all in this time recalling that image of Our Lady, sometimes called the Black Madonna, because of, well, they don't actually know why it's so dark now, but they assume maybe from candles. Likewise, they celebrate St. Mary at the Elms in Ipswich in Suffolk, England. Now, this is very interesting because you would think the image might be in England, but actually it's not. So in 1538, agents of Henry VIII, as we can imagine, destroyed the old shrine of Our Lady of Grace in Ipswich and took its statue to London to be burned. But in 1550, some Englishmen en route to Naples took shelter from a storm at Nettuno in Lazio and decided to give its people a wooden statue of the Madonna and Child they had with them, right? On the back is an Old English inscription, "Thou art gracious," right? It's thought that this statue, Madonna delle Grazie, still revered in Nettuno as the town patroness, came from that shrine in England. On September 10th, 2002, the Anglican bishop blessed a replica carved by a local artist and installed it at the Church of St. Mary at the Elms. Oh, Anglican bishop doing his thing. Okay. On the first weekend in May, a group from Ipswich joined the traditional celebration in Nettuno, right? And then on the last weekend, Italian pilgrims joined the annual procession from St. Mary in the Elms to the site of the original shrine in Lady Lane, right? Interesting devotion there. Likewise, just some quick mentions here. They celebrate Nuestra Señora de Gracia, Our Lady of Grace, in Belmonte, Cuenca, in Castilla-La Mancha, in Spain. This dates back to the 1200s, but the statue was solemnly crowned in 1983. Likewise, they celebrate Nuestra Señora de la Consolación y del Castillo in Montanches, Cáceres, Extremadura in Spain. This statue also was crowned in 1950. And lastly, Santa Maria del Alcor, Viso del Alcor, Sevilla in Andalusia, Spain. This statue was solemnly crowned in 2005. So that is what we're celebrating in the Marian world today on September 10th. For today's reading from True Devotion to Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we will start with part 1, which is entitled On Devotion to Our Blessed Lady in General, and we'll start with the first part entitled Excellence and Necessity of Devotion to Our Blessed Lady. So we'll start with point 14. I avow with all the Church that Mary, being but a mere creature that has come from the hands of the Most High, is, in comparison with His infinite majesty, less than an atom, or rather she is nothing at all. He who is, and thus by consequence that grand Lord, always independent and sufficient to Himself, never had, nor has not now, any absolute need of the Holy Virgin for the accomplishment of His will, and for the manifestation of His glory. He has but to will in order to do everything, because He only is. In other words, he's saying that, yes, Mary is a mere creature, and absolutely speaking, God didn't need to use her. But then we get to point 15. Nevertheless, I say that, things being supposed as they are now, God having willed to commence and to complete His greatest works by the Most Holy Virgin, since He created her, we may well think He will not change His conduct in eternal ages. For He is God, and He changes not either in His sentiments nor in His conduct. In other words, he says, God began and completed His greatest works, so like our redemption, by means of the Virgin Mary. And he says, so because God doesn't change, we wouldn't expect that to change either, that God still wants to carry out His work of salvation by means of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Point 16. God the Father has not given His only begotten Son to the world, except by Mary. Whatever sighs the patriarchs may have sent forth, whatever prayers the prophets and the saints of the ancient law may have offered up to obtain that treasure for full 4,000 years, it was but Mary who merited it. It was but Mary who found grace before God by the force of her prayers and the eminence of her virtues. The world was unworthy, says St. Augustine, to receive the Son of God immediately from the Father's hands. He has given Him to Mary in order that the world might receive Him through her. The Son of God has made Himself man, but it was in Mary and by Mary. God the Holy Ghost has formed Jesus Christ in Mary, but it was only after having asked her consent by one of the first ministers of His court, the Archangel Gabriel. And then point 17. God the Father has communicated to Mary His fruitfulness, as far as a mere creature was capable of it, in order that He might give her the power to produce His Son and all the members of His mystical body.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.